Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get the chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas.
Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha, Senior Vice President of Brand Awareness at Reveal. Each Friday morning at 11 a.m. Central, I host an episode, or 11 a.m. Eastern rather, I host an episode of eDiscovery Leaders Live when I get the chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. Past episodes are available on the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com. Select Resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live. My guest this week is Hannah Shaw. Hannah is Senior Consultant and Business Operations Manager at Orbital. She has led numerous complex and sensitive projects for international clients during multi-jurisdictional litigation, arbitration, internal and regulatory investigations. She's fluent in French and has prepared projects for French clients and provided client-facing technical support. Hannah is experienced in using various eDiscovery review platforms, in particular our own Reveal. Highly organized and detail-oriented, Hannah is driven to deliver projects effectively and efficiently ensuring client satisfaction. She's known for her hard work, team collaboration, and ability to deliver in challenging situations. She graduated from the University of Birmingham, UK, with a degree in law and French law, and spent a year studying in Strasbourg, France. Hannah, welcome.
Hi, George. Thanks for that intro.
Well, hopefully you can do a better job of not stumbling over your tongue than tripping over your tongue than I've been doing this morning or afternoon for you, because you're over in France. I'd like to start the discussion today with a focus on Orbital. Who you are, where you came from, what you're doing.
Yeah, so Orbital is an eDiscovery startup, actually the first global eDiscovery company to be built solely in the cloud. It started last September during the global pandemic with our co-founders, Bill Odom and Andrew Honeyford. And I've been involved pretty much from the beginning. It's been such an exciting and thrilling opportunity to get involved in a startup because there are just so many things to do. I'm lucky enough to wear many different hats. So as well as doing obviously the project support and project consulting, I also do some marketing, business development, finance, internal procedures, and organize some of our virtual internal events. Orbital is just a really exciting place to work because, you know, it's a small team, but with a global presence. We already have people based in the US, people in the UK, France, and Central Asia. And it really is just people focused. So we want to deliver really good, outstanding client service. And we're able to do that because we're agile, we're smaller, we can really make sure that we can change our workflows and our methodology to fit the client's needs. And we're a small team where we encourage everyone to share their ideas and speak about how they would like to see the company evolve. So it's been a great first year, and we're really looking forward to many things that we've got in line for the next years to come.
Starting a new business at any time is a challenge. Starting in the middle of a pandemic or at the beginning of a pandemic, a much greater challenge. Why now?
Yes, so it was an interesting time. And even though it's almost been a year, I think pretty much no one has actually met yet. So we're still working fully remote, and that comes with its challenges, but we've been able to overcome a lot of those, you know, using Teams, Zoom, making sure we have good communication, and many of us have worked together previously, so that really helps. I think, once Orbital started, we had been working in the global pandemic for quite a few months. So we were used to sort of having to, work from home and things like that. But most importantly, it really gave us an opportunity to build everything in the cloud. So we've got advanced data security and it's completely scalable, which is great. And going forward, we're still going to keep this remote model because we think people should be able to work wherever they choose to work. And it means we've got, access to a whole range of candidates for when we grow, because we can recruit literally anywhere. So that's really exciting. And it's the same for our clients, that we're able to service them wherever they need people, because even though we're a small team, we cover the globe already, and we hope to increase that in years to come.
What is the size of the team right now?
So there's currently about 6 of us. So we've got 2 people in the States, but on different time zones. So that's also helpful. We've got a couple of people in the UK, a couple of people in France, and in Central Asia as well. So really covering the globe.
Is there any one time when you can all meet live via Zoom or Teams, of course, but still live?
Yeah, that is our biggest challenge, I would say, is finding a time that works well for everyone. So often we have to be flexible, but normally there's a couple of hours in the day where we're all working. But it's nice that we can sort of cross over, and also means we can provide 24-hour support to our clients, because when someone's sleeping, someone else is working. So that's good.
One of the advantages of having a brick and mortar setup is that, at least in theory, for those times when you are focused on making key decisions or dealing with complex challenges, you can get everybody into one room, find a large whiteboard or some surface like that, and start writing up your ideas, reorganizing, scratching things out, marking things over. And that can be an efficient and effective way to get work done. Of course, when everyone's virtual, to say nothing about spread across the globe, you don't have a large whiteboard like that available. You don't have the in-person contact that a lot of people find to be highly beneficial. What sort of challenges does this raise for you all, or is it not even an issue?
I mean, I completely agree. And I think, in the near future, we hope to get everyone together in one place to have these sort of, big meetings where we can discuss and get around a whiteboard. But for the moment, we've just made the use of technology. We have meetings, and sometimes our brainstorming meetings can last, 2 to 3 hours, as we're all sharing ideas and getting involved. And the other thing we've tried to do is have sort of some social events to really, ensure we've got the team is collaborating well together. And we recently organized a virtual gin tasting session, which was very interesting for some of the people based in the States, as this started quite early for them.
Well, you have to be flexible, right?
You have to be flexible. But it was great fun to, just chat to the team and, in a more relaxed setting. So we have been able to overcome a lot of those issues.
You said that you are the first eDiscovery provider built entirely in the cloud. Talk a little bit about that, not just being the first, but let's start with being the first. Someone has to be the first. Someone has to make the decision to do that. And if you're the first, you're doing, by definition, what others haven't done before. How did you figure out what to do, when, and how?
Well, cloud technology, has been around for a while, but a lot of companies still feel the need to have a, secure data center, which obviously there are advantages for that. But for us, we already knew that we were going to be spread around the globe, all working remotely. And I guess the global pandemic, in some respects, was advantageous for that, because there was no way we could even think about getting a data center. And also, where would we put it when we're already servicing clients around the globe? So in some respects, it was quite a simple decision. It seemed to make the most sense for our business model. And again, data security is something that's really, really important. And we felt that that would be the safest option for our clients. We can spin up instances wherever our clients need. And that was something that was also very important to us when we made that decision.
So which cloud platform ultimately did you choose?
We're using Amazon.
And why Amazon? Yeah, why AWS as opposed to the other options out there, whether it's Azure from Microsoft, Google's cloud, any of the other options?
I mean, a lot of them are comparable. We just felt that that was the best cloud-based software for us at the time, and also with some of our technology partners, they've had experience using that particular service, so we felt that was the right decision for Orbital.
I'd like to switch gears and talk about diversity in eDiscovery, or as I think of it, people who don't look like me. So tell me about your perspective on diversity and eDiscovery, as well as your experiences.
So diversity and inclusion is a topic really close to my heart. And I recently wrote an article about that on LinkedIn. And that was a fantastic way just we interviewed quite a range of people and to really hear about their experiences in the industry. I have actually only worked in eDiscovery and started my career in eDiscovery. So when I began as a graduate trainee, although the workforce looked really diverse, and that was something I was happy with, the more deeper you looked, you saw that those in decision-making powers or management positions mainly were the classic white, cis, straight, able-bodied men. And I think that's something, across all industries that we really need to challenge and change that. Being young and female in this industry has definitely had its challenges. I've experienced times where people have taken credit for my work, or I've not been listened to, or I've been overlooked, or people just think I'm the secretary and not the project manager on the case. So it is frustrating and it is a battle, but the eDiscovery sector is definitely making improvements. I hope we can do it quicker as well. But the main thing is just to keep having these conversations and to raise awareness about it, because the more we're talking about it, the more that people are aware that we need to hear from different voices in our sector, the more things are going to change. And that's what I want to really encourage.
How do we help different voices more effectively be heard?
So what really came out of my article when I interviewed many different eDiscovery professionals was 3 aspects. It's to listen, to educate, and to be an ally. And listening just means listen to other people's experiences. We all work in companies with a range of people. Ask them, speak to them. What's your perspective been like? How has this been for you? And I think that's just really important. And those that tend to hold the power, they kind of just need to really listen and perhaps just accept that people do have different experiences, that it isn't always easy. It's not always straightforward to have your voice heard, for example. With education, I think we all have a responsibility to educate ourselves, to read articles, books that really challenge our perspective of the world. And, companies also have a responsibility to, put training programs together for diversity and inclusion, or create platforms where people from marginalized backgrounds can really share their experiences and be heard. And then the last point is to be an ally. And that's really just to stand up for people who perhaps can't stand up for themselves. Often when you're in a situation when it's, where you feel you're being discriminated against, it's difficult to say, hang on a minute, that's not fair. Whereas if you're surrounded by people who are willingly going to call that out for you, that really helps those people feel empowered that they have a voice and that they are being respected, and that sort of behavior or inappropriate comments isn't accepted in a company.
In the research that you've done and in your own experience, have you found, have you found certain approaches to be more effective, less effective?
I think a really simple one that we should definitely try and do more often is in meetings, when often it's the loudest person who dominates the meeting. If we just open up the conversation a little bit, so the person perhaps who's running the meeting can say, thank you, person X, for sharing your opinion. Maybe we can now hear from person Y about their thoughts on the topic, or something like this. And the more people and voices we bring into the conversation, the more sort of diverse ideas and experiences will come out of that. And for those people who perhaps feel less confident about talking in a group setting, is also just take some of those conversations offline, but make sure their opinions and ideas are shared with the wider group at an appropriate time.
Dealing with these challenges of diversity can be difficult enough within your own organization. Then when you deal with clients or customers, there's an added level of challenge. What have you seen to be successful techniques for raising awareness of diversity and dealing with some of the specific challenges that arise out of that when you're dealing with clients and customers?
I think, that is difficult, but the world is changing, and, diversity and inclusion is a topic that is spoken about a lot more openly, certainly in the recent years compared to previously. And again, I think it's just about having those conversations. Yes, you have to be careful, and you have to, we don't need to we just need to be able to talk about it in a respectful manner, whether that be with a client or internally with colleagues, and just make sure that we can, still have these conversations, because it's not going away. We need more diversity across all industries. So it's just important to keep those conversation channels open.
And what happens when a conversation's not enough? I mean, we all run into those situations where there's someone who just isn't going to listen, isn't going to change, isn't going to adapt.
That is really tough. And I think, you do have to pick your moments. There have been situations where I felt I can't speak up, or it's not the right time. And, that's really unfortunate. But if there are more people supporting you and saying, no, it's that person who is in the wrong, who is sharing an unpopular opinion, then it becomes like more the status quo, that everyone's encouraging diversity, and we can all sort of support each other to try to educate that person. And sometimes maybe it's just sharing an article with them, or suggesting a book for them to read, because yes, there are times where you can explain your point of view until you're blue in the face and nobody's going to listen. But it doesn't mean we should give up or stop trying to do that. Otherwise, we're just sweeping the issue under the carpet, and we need to make sure things change.
With clients, do you sometimes simply in the end have to walk away, or have you found, and have you seen others be able to find some way to deal with the issue so they don't have to cut things off entirely?
I think with clients, obviously it's more sensitive, because you want to ensure a good working relationship. From my experience, it was just people assumed I wasn't the project manager. So I was sort of able to talk my way out of that and demonstrate that I was in fact the project manager on the case, not the assistant. And, I think sometimes perhaps somebody higher up in the organization who has a better relationship with the client can also just pull the client aside and say, that wasn't appropriate, and if it's really inappropriate, then I think businesses have to make, the change and say, actually, we don't want to work with this client because of X, Y, and Z. And although that's a really bold statement, the more action that we're showing means that clients will have to change, or all companies will have to change. So sometimes making that bold statement is best for improving diversity. One
of the things that I think diversity can bring to the table is, well, what can diversity bring to the table? It can bring diversity. A range of views and perspectives that might not otherwise be there, and helps open up the thought process to perhaps doing things in a different way that could be ultimately a more effective way. Have you seen that as an outcome as well?
Yeah, so obviously diversity is just the right thing to do, but there are many, many business benefits as well that, have been proved time and time again. You get a more diverse candidate pool, more people to choose from, making sure that you really get the best people for the job. As you mentioned, share, different ideas, different perspectives. The more different backgrounds you have around the table, the more people are going to be able to share their ideas that perhaps if it was just a room full of white men, then they wouldn't be able to see that. So I think that's really important. And just it also encourages better clients as well, because the more diversity you have within your company, the more diversity you're going to encourage with your clients.
So switching gears once more, I'm sitting in the States. You're sitting in France. Discovery in France is no doubt different from discovery in the United States.
Yes.
Many of our audience members have no experience dealing with discovery in France at all. So explain.
So for many, many years, France has been an emerging market in eDiscovery. We've been saying for at least the past 5 years it's going to explode. That's still not quite the case yet, but it's getting busier and busier. The main difference in France is that there is no tradition of discovery and disclosure like there is in the UK and the US. So often in litigation, you would only disclose documents that the court has ordered you to disclose, and that's a very, very narrow set of documents. So there isn't this sort of tradition about having huge bundles of paperwork shipped off to court and things like that just didn't exist. However, that said, now that there's more cross-border litigation and regulatory investigations, eDiscovery is definitely becoming more familiar in France. However, it's a very strict jurisdiction, and I think that's something that we have to remember. Notably, there's the French blocking statute, which means it is a criminal offence for evidence to be used outside of France, whether that's communication around economics, finance, technical information, things like that. So it's a very broad blocking statute, which often there's some frustration within the States when they're trying to get the information and you just can't. So that's often why as well, French data has to stay in France, and our clients are very, very protective over their data. We even sometimes have to spin up mobile solutions so the data not only remains in France, but on site, because they're very wary about data being shared elsewhere.
Go ahead.
The other main difference is the law firm structure here. So, of course, you've got the big American and British law firms present in France, but actually all lawyers are self-employed. So it means that there are often a lot of smaller, bespoke, very specialized law firms with perhaps 6 to 10 lawyers that handle some of these big cases. So they don't have, the team to do doc reviews and things like that, which is very different compared to the States and the UK. But it also means that this is where review platforms with advanced data analytics and AI really come into their own, because that way a smaller team can conduct a document review, getting to the important documents faster rather than having a large review team.
So there's a lot to unpack in there in terms of the differences and the different approaches. I know that as a starting point, one thing that confuses and confounds many folks in the US is how, with a structure where there's almost no discovery, where you turn something over to the other side only if a judge says that needs to be turned over, how do you figure out what the other side did? because we're used to the notion that you get to inquire more, and inquire yet more until you can put together a good understanding, not just of what your client did, but what the folks on the other side of the lawsuit were doing.
Yeah, so I mean, in France, the judge plays and has a greater power as well of like deciding and directing how the case unfolds. So there's less of this need to prove everything with tons and tons of documents. It's more driven by the judge and things like that. Also, it's very rare that we have juries in France as well. So that's another aspect. It's just, yeah, it's a different legal system, and it is difficult to get your head around when we're used to sort of in the US or the UK that are quite similar in some respects.
Yeah, here we're plagued with the problem of any and all. The request, give me any and all documents pertaining to this topic, and you expect the other side, or you pretend to expect that the other side will go out and find every single example and turn all of those over to you. It sounds from what you're saying as if in France, it's a much more targeted approach. You don't need every example. You need a good example. Is that a proper interpretation?
Yes, I would say so. You want to prove your point, but you don't need every single example under the sun in order to be able to do so.
So with that thought in mind, I think of eDiscovery platforms and discovery tools generally as being used in one of two broad fashions. One, to that any and all idea, is find more like this. I've got something. Now help me go out and find every other thing that's identical to it or similar to it. That's by and large what happens in the review process. I know there's a thing I'm looking for. Where is every example? That's by and large how the TAR or predictive coding tools are used. I find something I like, find more that are like it that I'm going to like as well. But there's another side to the tools, and it's the tell me something I don't know tools. The exploratory tools that let you investigate, dig into the data, and try to find the things in there that are important that you may not have realized. From what you're saying, I gather that latter group of tools, that tell me something I don't know tools, are much more important in the French legal system than the find more like this tools.
Correct. I mean, we predominantly use the tools for investigations where we're trying to see really an overview of the data. So often a law firm will say, well, we've been instructed for this reason. However, we don't know the full picture or the full story. So in that respect, we often use the tools, especially like the AI and the data analytics, to really understand what's been going on with the data. So who's been communicating with who, the data, the timelines of when emails have been sent, and, the topics that come to light when you're able to use the data analytics. And that is far more powerful or necessary in France when we're doing more sort of investigatory work and things like that.
And of course, if you have an investigation taking place, that becomes the primary use as well, right?
Correct.
When you're using those tools, and again, from what I'm understanding of what you're saying, the primary data you're likely to work with is your client's own data rather than the other side's data. Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, correct. Very rarely do we get a third-party data set.
So you start with your own client's data. You use it to explore in many different ways. If you've got AI capabilities, you take advantage of those to the maximum. You begin to develop a picture of what you think happened and what you think the other side did. At what point, if at all, does the other side's data come into play? Sorry about the dog barking.
Often the other side's data or the projects I've worked on has only come into play when there has been, a case in the States and there's been a forced disclosure, often when there's aspects in France as well. If not, you really have to build the picture with the data that you have and understand what's been going on from that aspect. obviously we can conduct, the lawyers conduct interviews and things like that to see what's happened, but you kind of left with the data you have, and that's how you have to construct your case.
Sounds like you're required to be more creative in some ways than we have to be.
I don't know about that, but it's just the way it is in France.
Yeah. Well, Hannah, thank you very much. Hannah Shaw is a senior consultant and business operations manager at Orbital, or Orbital Data Consulting. I am George Socha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. Thanks for joining us today, and please join us again next Friday, July 16th, when our guest will be Dan Linna. Dan is Senior Lecturer and Director of Law and Technology Initiatives at Northwestern Pritzker School of Law and McCormick School of Engineering. Hannah, thanks very much for joining us this week.
Thank you.